Hello, welcome to the Conditions of Our Parole. It is a very special episode because it's May Day, International Workers' Day. So if you are elsewhere on the planet, you are likely celebrating Labor Day, even though the holiday of May Day has roots in the United States. So you probably already know it's based around the Haymarket Affair, Chicago, Illinois, 1886. And the resulting trial and executions of what are called the Haymarket Martyrs. And to this day, on the outskirts of Chicago, in one of the suburbs, you can, in Forest Park, you can see the Haymarket Martyrs Monument. So it's widely known and recognized in the United States, at least to labor historians and leftists. And it's funny, Grover Cleveland, he decided to make Labor Day in September in the United States so that it wasn't tied to radical politics or anarchism or socialism or whatever. So, you know, just typical American shit. And the funniest thing is that I was looking it up because I wondered, you know, what sort of replacements for May Day, like if any there are in the United States, like, you know, some stupid holidays. And I was very correct. We have Law Day, which is a holiday dedicated to how important obedience is, and we also have Loyalty Day. So, you know, it was a day to celebrate your loyalty to the good old US of A. So, you know, it's funny because, I mean, goddamn, man, like, can you picture, that sounds like some Third Reich holiday shit. Law Day and Loyalty Day. It's funny in a very sad way, but anyway, so in remembrance of the Haymarket Martyrs and the labor movement in the United States and elsewhere, happy May Day, and hope you are enjoying yourselves here in Reno, Nevada. It is a beautiful 70-some degree day out. Sun is shining, and it's Friday, so it's a perfect mix of elements to make this a wonderful holiday. So I'm very happy to be talking to you, and I mean, I'm trying to be positive and optimistic during this pandemic, and obviously there's been some scary shit in the news recently. I'll talk about that in a second, but the good things that have been going on have to do with workers and strikes and a growing militancy and disenfranchisement with the neoliberal status quo. So, you know, The Intercept had an article. It came out on the 28th of April. You know, The Intercept, I think I've talked about it before. They kind of, they're 50-50. They can go one way or the other. But this article was very good. It is about how today, they are calling it an unprecedented coalition of workers. So I'll just read the first paragraph. It kind of goes into what's going on. An unprecedented coalition of workers from some of America's largest companies will strike on Friday, that's today. Workers from Amazon, Instacart, Whole Foods, Walmart, Target, and FedEx are slated to walk out on work, citing what they say is their employers' record profits at the expense of workers' health and safety during the coronavirus pandemic. So these workers are going to call in sick, or they're going to walk off a job. And, you know, we've been sort of seeing more of this stuff, especially with Amazon. I mean, I've talked about, there's the sort of famous organizer at this point, I think we can call him. Can't remember his name. So, super famous guy. But, you know, his Staten Island situation with the Amazon factory out there. And how they were smearing him, and I'm trying to remember his name. It was something small, or I can't remember. Anyway, so, but more power to him and his fellow workers at Amazon, and we should all stick by them. And, you know, there's going to be more opportunities for people who, even if you are not an essential worker, if you're not at work, if you are sitting at home like I am, feeling very non-essential, you can do things like go online and look up different, there are like, I know that United Electrical Workers and I think even DSA and a few other outlets are providing sort of like organizer trainings. So you can do your part sitting at home. And I've been trying to do that. I talked about, I think in a different episode, how exciting it is that I was invited by my buddy Rito, who I've talked about, who's an organizer for the Bernie campaign. He used to be an organizer for the same union I used to organize for, AFSCME. This whole meeting that he invited me to through Zoom or some other outlet, it was all about how these Bernie organizers were all planning on salting. So they were going to take what they had learned through the Bernie campaign, they were going to take those organizing chops and put them to work in a setting, like a factory setting or a warehouse, whatever, use that organizing experience to form unions in different ununionized workplaces. So that to me is like very exciting. That is exactly what I think needs to happen. I think salting and grassroots organizing as far as the workplace, the actual, center of capitalism's primary contradiction, the workplace, I think that is going to be extremely important in the coming years. Not that it hasn't been altogether throughout our history, but I think people are waking up to the fact that electoral politics is a dead zone. I mean, I don't think we should give it up. Naturally, I have a certain Leninist streak in me that says no, we need to still pay attention to parliamentary politics and what have you. So anyway, that's sort of exciting, and in hearing about all these strikes, obviously, in these giant, I mean, we're talking Target, we're talking FedEx, Walmart. I mean, this isn't, not to knock any organizers who organized sandwich shops or burger joints or whatever. That's absolutely important and it needs to happen. But I mean, it's really exciting to hear that workers, the way that The Intercept described it, an unprecedented coalition. So, I mean, just think of it. Amazon, Instacart, Whole Foods, Walmart, Target, FedEx, and others. That's a reason to kind of smile. Drinking a refreshing beer. It's May Day. I'm celebrating. So that's makes me feel optimistic. And I really I can't say it enough. The fact that the Bernie campaign, it was never about Bernie. It was about training communities and individuals, about training them in order to allow them in the future to organize workplaces and organize their communities. And I mean, or allowing communities to organize themselves. That's exactly what it needed to be, because a lot of us, it had me for a second. I busted my ass knocking doors for Bernie, and the feeling of being in Nevada when those results came in and the fucking champagne bottles popping and everybody just screaming, how happy we all were, hugging and embracing each other, and just, the fact that we had busted our asses and we didn't just win, we clobbered the shit out of everybody in Nevada. All the other Democratic candidates, massacred them. And that really was a beautiful thing. So there was a moment there where it was like, oh, you know what? Maybe we're going to do it. And silly me and silly us. I don't know. There was always the back of my mind, that little fucker back there, like, nah, they're gonna screw him over again. Don't you worry. So, yeah, that kind of sucks. But again, the fact that the organizing chops that people developed as either professional organizers or people who canvassed for the first time or people who were phone banking for the first time, that is really what the whole goddamn thing was about, and that is the future. That the ability to take people out of their comfort zones who have never organized before, who've never taken part in any sort of political process or anything like that. Even all the people who were in the caucus. Like, I volunteered for the caucus as a precinct captain. I've never taken part in a fucking caucus, and neither did the guy who was there. So it was just like, I've heard different anecdotal stories from a lot of other people who were involved in the campaign, and they were like, yeah, I have never done this shit, but I'm keeping an eye out because I know they're gonna try to rat fuck us. And so we all had this attitude of like, we're watching you, motherfucker. Like, so not to say we didn't have a good time with everybody except Amy Klobuchar's supporters, or I should say supporter. She sucked. The Warren people were okay, but you could tell they were bourgeois. They didn't really have a dog in the fight. They're going to be fine regardless of what happens. There wasn't a single Biden person, so didn't talk to anybody from his camp. And oh my God, he's the fucking nominee. Surprise, surprise. And Pete's people. Pete had a bunch of he had people. Fuck, where the hell were they from? They were. I think they were from some more upper class part of California. They had these two like suburbanite folks were there. They were not from Nevada. Pete did fucking miserable here, as he deserves to do everywhere. But yeah, so I mean, the only real like grassroots organic motherfuckers out there were the Bernie crowd. So you know that's a source of pride. And I'll say it again, the fact that campaign trained people in organizing and allowed them to become more confident and courageous regarding organizing their communities and talking to people and building worker militancy and whatnot. There are very few things in the revolutionary process that are that important. It's so that's inspiring. So yeah, these strikes and everything, and the fact that I think we're going to have a bunch of foot soldiers out there assaulting, that's exactly what needs to happen. That's the only way forward, is we start taking over factories. We start, like, look, I have this whole, hold on. I have this whole sort of Titoist fantasy that, well, I had it when we were looking at Bernie getting elected. Don't have it really now. That we were going to see all these, like, we could, like I said, it's a fantasy. This isn't something I expected to actually happen, but just to have like a bunch of industries nationalized and given over to the workers. Imagine Bernie getting in there and being like, yeah, you know what, energy workers and hospitals and everything, it's all going to be public and the workers are going to run it. Oh, God, it's awesome. How awesome that would be. Naturally, that's not going to happen. Even in the midst of this pandemic, it is really fucking hilarious to me, all these idiots that are like, hey, the stock market's looking up, the economy's looking up. So yeah, it's because they're operating under the assumption that the fucking government, aka us, that we're gonna keep bailing them out, that they can keep fucking around doing whatever they want, and they're just gonna get bailed out. Of course, they're gonna be confident and happy with all this shit. So, these jagoffs that on the right that are just like, yeah, even in a pandemic, Trump's economy is just, excuse me. That was not a dry cough, so don't worry. So, yeah. The whole electoral politics thing, I'm telling you, I wanted this episode to be mostly about workers and strikes and everything, but there is so much bullshit going on right now. As far as the election goes, and I mean, I'm like a masochist. Like, there's no reason for me to even fucking pay attention to this bullshit, but I do anyway. So the whole Biden thing, they finally, I can't remember who it was. I think it was somebody on MSNBC. She interviewed Biden, and he denies that he sexually assaulted Tara Reid. And there's the whole Larry King Live call-in from like 1993 or whenever it was, where it's her mom saying, my daughter had this thing happen with a senator, and what the hell is she supposed to do? That fucking episode mysteriously disappears off of Google Play. CNN says they didn't have anything to do with it. It's just, there's just a lot of just zany shit going on, and it's like, you can't ignore it. But what I will tell you is that, looking at the 2020 election, Biden and Trump, I used to think it was going to be a landslide for Trump. I thought, he was just going to trounce Biden. But now I don't know. I don't know. Because I think Biden actually is, this is going to sound weird, but I think he might be the more comfortable candidate for big business. He already there was that whole clip, like, even before we got knee deep in the primary or whatever, where he said to a room full of fucking billionaires, hey, you know, if I'm elected, nothing is going to fundamentally change for you guys. Like, you know, so it's just amazing to me that that clip's out there. He's got a sexual assault allegation against him. We already know he was in favor of racist legislation, and he was friends with Strom Thurmond, one of the United States' most famous racists, in government at least. You know, the Iraq War situation, his support for it, and his later kind of like not even backpedaling, but like his saying shit like, oh, you know, it wasn't that I thought there were weapons of mass destruction. It was that I thought, you know, if we went in there, we would find out that there were no weapons of mass destruction, and then, you know, we wouldn't have a war. It's you are so full of shit. So all this stuff, his saying he wants to cut Social Security and welfare programs. So all of this stuff is going on, with the cherry on top being that he's potentially a fucking rapist, which I lean on the side of, yeah, you digitally penetrated her. I believe it. Does anybody not believe that fucking creepy ass Joe Biden, Mr. Hair Sniffer, has never done something questionable as far as like touching women goes? Is that so fucking unbelievable? Anyway, all that shit is sort of swirling around in the witch's cauldron, and you cannot sink his ship. And the most terrifying thing about this is that it might have been in The Intercept too. I can't remember, but there was an article that said something about Hillary Clinton waiting to pounce and become the nominee. That they might do something like make her the VP, and then when the time comes, Biden will step down and say, I'm in no shape to fucking do this, and Hillary will become the nominee. That would be absolutely suicidal for the Democratic Party, but then again, they obviously are fucking Ernest Hemingway style, like got the shotgun against their against their fucking forehead, just waiting to pull that trigger. I don't know. Well, you know, it's not even a conspiracy. It's just fucking out in the open. It's like Gore Vidal said. The United States has one political party. Is the Property Party. And it has two right wings, Democratic Party and Republican Party. The Democratic Party, you know, I'm even guilty of this, like saying it's suicidal and saying it's fucking up and doing this, and that. And it's like, no, I honestly think is a part of some hegemonic structure that the Democratic Party exists only for a sort of, it's like a pageantry in politics. It doesn't really do anything. It claims to be the working class party. It claims to care about marginalized populations and whatnot. And it doesn't do dick for them. And they simply exist by saying, well, at least we're not Republicans. And the shitty thing is that, look, it's like I talked about it on the other, I think like the last episode. The Republican Party denying climate change, already that makes it a fucking insane, dangerous organization. But the uncritical use of military power, the cutting taxes constantly for the ultra wealthy, you know, all of their extreme pro-business policies, the Republican Party is a detriment to human beings, not just in the United States, but all over the planet. But the Democratic Party, in my view, exists to sort of keep the Republican Party afloat. That it looks like there's an alternative, but really there isn't. That the Democrats are just going to adhere to the same neoliberal, right-wing capitalist policies that the Republicans want, just kinder and gentler, you know? It's like I brought up, fucking, you know, the Democratic Party is supposed to be a party that it cares about environmentalism. And then you have Obama going overseas, I think, I can't remember where he was, but I think he was overseas, but he was talking to what I assume was a room full of people who paid a lot of money for their tickets to be there, and was bragging about how oil production in the United States was up. You know, the fracking shit happened under Obama. The pipeline shit happened under Obama. He wanted to pass TPP. The Democrats, they want to do the same shit that the Republicans do regarding big business, okay? Generally. There are a few exceptions. I think like TPP is like an example. That being said, fucking Trump like going out there acting like his bullshit USMCA or whatever is any better. Even God, it really I think it was disappointing when AMLO was sort of in support of it. God. Anyway, so him acting like that's any better than fucking NAFTA is like just ridiculous. And what was really disgusting is the fucking AFL-CIO and Richard Trumka fucking like acting like we at least we had a say. Oh God, fuck. It just happy May Day. So anyway, the point is that I think the Democratic Party is sort of it's like I said, it adds to the pageantry of American politics. In reality, really, like the Gore Vidal quote, we have one party, we have this hegemonic power structure, this system that keeps us in positions of subservience. And anyway, my opinion is that the primary way that we are going to have to go about changing that is by, in the sort of Gramscian sense, building our own alternative institutions, building different political parties or different organizations, more radical unions that are not tied to the conservative AFL-CIO. It sucks what's happening with the longshoremen. If you haven't heard about that, there's a good chance that they might be bankrupted. Some bullshit going on with a particular company out west on the coast. And that's disappointing because the longshoremen are one of the most radical and militant unions we have. I mean, we have UE, the electrical workers, the IWW to a degree, but they are more so like, they'll organize like a Jimmy John shop or a burger, like Burgerville. And I'm part of the IWW too, nominally. They don't have a chapter out here, but not yet. But I am wearing my IWW shirt with the Sabo cat on it, so I very much support the IWW. And I think the Wobblies are the sort of blueprint of what we need to do as far as like alternative institutions. And I talked to Rito about this as far as like, building a workers' cooperative and stuff like that through whether it's donations or grants. But I told him, look, the workers' co-op thing, I'm all for it, whatever, but it doesn't fundamentally change the capitalist system. Like, I think, what's that big-ass co-op in Spain? There's an M. Is it Madrigal? Something like that. So, I don't know. I'm an idiot. But anyway, that thing was allowed during Franco's regime. So, I mean, it's you can have cooperatives that fucking function within a fascistic or capitalist framework, So the whole point of revolutionary socialism, in my view, is to give the power of production to workers, and while a co-op does it for maybe to a degree to the workers in that co-op, it still leaves the system intact, and that is unacceptable. So on top of a cooperative, we would need something like salting, militant workers getting jobs in factories and warehouses and docks, farms, whatever, and organizing workers. Because we cannot allow we have to develop the alternative institutions, but we also have to remain on the offensive. We cannot, we will not survive if we just simply, we'll have a fucking anarchist garden. like there's like some shit like that out here. Like, don't get me wrong, I think it's admirable, but it's like, okay, you got a garden, good for you. How about that liberation of the working class thing? It's a fucking huge project, and that's what a lot of us have to come to terms with the fact that even as young as we are, I'm not even 30 years old yet. I'm close, but I have come to terms with the fact that I will not see the sort of communist society with the small c, not the fucking Stalinist brand, that I want to see, that I think humanity deserves. It's all a progression, the materials are changing, our conditions are changing, our behaviors are changing, in some cases for better, in some cases for worse. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I think, unions like the longshoremen, like the electrical workers, like the IWW, those are going to have to be those really grassroots, democratically functioning unions that, disregard the AFL-CIO as reactionary, which it is. It's all of its ties to the Democratic Party and whatnot. Those are the future. Right now my project is, as a member of AFSCME, I'm trying to push it to the left, this local, as much as I can. And that really just means, today I sent out, I've been doing like a rank and file newsletter. I'm trying to build a rank and file caucus within the local because I have a very hostile relationship with the executive board, and a lot of my fellow workers do. They are really sort of power hungry. They are, I think, inept. I think incompetent. For example, I was an AFSCME staff member, an organizer. I didn't have a union. I was at will. So you have these motherfuckers running around talking about workers' rights and how they need a contract and trying to get collective bargaining and all that shit. They don't even give it to their own staff. And that's the sad truth. That's a consistent in a lot of unions. That they'll have a staff that's not unionized. So shit like that's got to change. But anyway, back to what I was talking about. In my union, I'm trying to build a rank and file caucus to sort of have that democratic element of, we, the rank and file, want to be making the decisions. We do not, look, a vast majority of the members of this damn thing, this local, look, we have one local across the entire state of Nevada. The two primary hubs are Reno and Las Vegas, obviously the two big cities in the state. If you were to go and talk to all these different members, how many of them even would know who the fuck the president of the local is? Or who's on the executive board, or what they do, or how they vote? A lot of people don't know shit about what's going on. So my goal is to at least make my chapter, the Reno chapter, more educated, more militant, and more informed about what's going on and what our position should be in decision making. So that's that's also what makes the wildcat strike situation so impressive and inspiring. Is that you have I saw a Payday report. They report on labor related issues. They I can't remember when this article came out or whatever, but they have this portion, it's like an ongoing project. They have an interactive map of the United States with identified wildcat strikes. And in doing the project I'm working on about hegemony and what I call the graveyard of social movements, the Democratic Party, and all that stuff, the MIC resistance, like I've been calling it, McDonaldization of activism. So I was trying to figure out, okay, well, I can't be the only one thinking about this shit and thinking that we need to really start having rank and file militant worker-led actions, not these fucking top-down bureaucrats like AFSCME or SEIU or whatever, Teamsters. Look, those unions do good things. I'm not going to trash them all, but the whole bureaucracy element and the fact that they are so connected to status quo politics is why we're weak. It's why people aren't joining fucking unions. After Taft-Hartley, after 1947 and the whole second Red Scare, unions went to shit. As soon as they chased out all the communists and anarchists from the unions, everything went dick. Not to say that there weren't militant strikes and stuff like that afterwards, but the whole tie of labor to the Democratic Party and institutional politics, that really fucked up everything. Post-World War II labor really went to shit. But anyway, back to my point. The wildcat strikes that are going on are impressive because the Payday report said since March 2020, there have been over 100 identified wildcat strikes nationwide in the United States. That's incredible. And then today, the whole sick out, like the unprecedented coalition of these workers from these huge companies, just adding to that. I mean, we're seeing something here. This is very, we got to keep our eyes open, and we need to also look. I mean, this is not to sound like an opportunist, but we also have to be willing to get organized. We cannot have a bunch of unorganized wildcat strikes with no direction forward, okay? Because here's what will happen. You'll end up having a bunch of different, maybe unions get recognized, and they'll get a contract with their boss, and then it's business as usual. What we need to have happen is have a fucking militant vanguard situation. Not, I know that word brings up a lot of memories of, oh God, he's talking about the Bolsheviks, but sort of. But we have to avoid the pitfalls that fucked up the Russian Revolution, and we have to have organization. We have to have goals. It's like I talked about before. The whole Occupy Wall Street situation fucked up because it was just like a bunch of pissed off people. It's like, okay, well, what is the direction forward? What world are we imagining? And I think, it's in the IWW Constitution. We're going to have to build the new society within the shell of the old. We're going to build a new world. And that's going to have to be worker-led. We're going to have to be militant. It's going to have to be rank and file. And we're going to have all these wildcat strikes going on, but there has to be, it has to be organized. Like look, the reason that Taft-Hartley really fucked up labor was because before, not that there hasn't been solidarity strikes after, but, Taft-Hartley essentially made solidarity strikes illegal. So, say you're a grocery store worker and you and your fellow workers decide to strike. Well, the truck drivers that deliver the stuff to the store might say, okay, well, if you're on strike, we are not delivering to that store. We'll have a solidarity strike, okay? The warehouse workers that box the shit for that store might say, hey, we're not boxing the shit for that store. We're on a solidarity strike. Until you recognize them and give them what they want, we're not doing shit. So Taft-Hartley made that illegal. And look, I guess that's the thing with the wildcat strikes is that those are illegal. Even the teachers that were walking out in West Virginia and Oklahoma and Arizona and Kentucky and elsewhere, they could have gotten arrested. Naturally, no, governor or statesman, whatever, statesperson, whatever the fucking proper thing to say is now, nobody wants to be the political figure that throws a bunch of teachers in jail. I mean, well, maybe like some asshole like fucking Tom Cotton, but even conservatives are like, oh, we don't want to be, that's a bad look. They were successful. Those teacher strikes were successful. So that was inspiring, and I think a lot of these workers, whether it's Amazon or Walmart or wherever, they saw that and they thought, and they are doing the same thing. So, like I said, the Payday Report, since March 2020, over 100 wildcat strikes. So that mixed with what's going on with the pandemic, with people getting pissed off and wondering what the hell's going to happen next. People are desperate. There's going to be things like rent strikes. That's another thing. People, there's calls for don't pay your fucking rent. Whether you can or not, don't pay it. It's the first of the month. So a lot of people are going to be, their rent's due. But, there's calls to not pay your fucking rent. So something to consider. I think it's mostly in like New York and California and a few other places. But, I'm sure that's going to catch on. I'm sure there will be like statewide rent strikes, which is another exciting thing. I'm telling you, I bring up the example. I mean, look, there's with Gramsci, he pays a lot of attention to language. And when I've been doing my research and everything, it's hard not to see that motherfucker like in everything I'm reading, because I was looking at NGOs and their impact in Latin America, like these sort of liberal non-governmental organizations would go to Latin America and sort of link up with these radical groups, left-wing groups. And essentially as a means of co-optation and de-radicalizing these groups, these NGOs would adopt their language, revolution and empowerment and fight and resist and all this stuff, and they just drain it of meaning. And I would say the example of language in the United States associated with worker rebellion, protests, strikes, etc., has even been just totally removed from our vocabulary. So in 2019, during the shutdown, the government shutdown, when Sarah Nelson was at that AFL-CIO dinner and she fucking said the words general strike, that's huge. Because that's like the return of a revolutionary vocabulary, and it's very important. I gave a presentation a few days ago, and I told the people I was presenting to that, it even applies to imagery. So, the whole like marketization of protest and all that shit, the institutionalization of activism, I use the example of the Che Guevara t-shirt, the famous photograph, Alberto Corda's photograph of him. His stern face looking towards the sky, and it's the famous revolutionary fucking photograph. Everybody knows because it's on t-shirts and shit. I use the example of that because how many people actually know who the hell that is? Like, if I were walking down the street in a Che shirt, how many people would be like, Che Guevara, yeah, 26th of July movement, yeah. Not many. A lot of people just see that face as like a general, like, oh, hey, fucking Tom Morello's got that guy on his amp. That type of thing. So it's like, so even imagery and history is drained from its meaning, or the meaning is drained from history in the images and in language. So, that's what is exciting about what's going on, is that like the fact that words like wildcat strike and general strike, rent strike, like all this stuff, like, it's been unheard of for so many people for so long, for decades. When was the last time an AFL-CIO union leader proposed having a general strike that all the unions call a general strike? I mean, Sarah Nelson's a badass motherfucker, just for even just that reason, having the audacity, the courage to be like, hey, time to do this shit, let's stop being afraid, and that's what's really hopeful to me about all the action that we're seeing, especially in the midst of a fucking pandemic. Now for the scary shit. I saw today, I think it happened yesterday, but I saw reports regarding armed militiamen, not storming. I'm tempted, when you hear armed, you're so tempted to say fucking storming. We'll say entering the Michigan Capitol building yesterday to protest Governor Whitmer's, keeping everything closed. So the police are protecting the governor, and I'm telling you, if you look at these pictures, man, it looks like just fascist. It really looks like a fascist militia just stormed a government office, which is kind of like, what the fuck happened? But the astonishing thing is, and I've been telling this to people, the police response has been like, yeah, well, and it's like, can you imagine, just for a second, if groups of armed leftist militias with red and black flags, with bandanas over their faces and sunglasses and all sorts of shit covering them up, Antifa style, just imagine how many minutes it would take for the fucking National Guard to show up and start massacring motherfuckers. Like, it's astonishing. It's like, and that's like the whole like Unite the Right shit, the whole the Proud Boys shit. You can see drastically a difference in how left and right groups are treated by the police. My theory is that there's two elements to that, two factors, whatever you want to say. One is that if you're a part of a right-wing militia, you are just calling for a more brutal version of the status quo, a more brutal capitalism. And so you're not a threat to the order of things. You're not a threat to the power system, and therefore the cops don't really have a problem with you. You're actually, if you're one of those right-wing militia people, you're actually a part of sustaining the status quo. if you're on the left, on the other hand, even marginally on the left, like the DSA, which is fucking moderate by a lot of measures, you're a threat. You're perceived as a threat, whether you're armed or not. You'll get fucking pepper sprayed and get your skull cracked in, like a lot of people did for protesting right to work in Wisconsin and Michigan and elsewhere. The double standard is astonishing, first of all. But second of all, here's the other thing that we have to keep in mind. A lot of the members of these right-wing militia groups and just right-wing groups in general, like the Proud Boys, etc., they're fucking cops. There is definitely a linkage between police officers and these crazy-ass right-wing groups. It just seems to attract the same type of people. Which, that's comforting. Looking at these pictures, I'll admit, that shit is scary to me. And I don't think you're going to legislate your problems away. Let's just put it that way. When I look at these pictures, and I see 5 or 6 armed, masked, not with medical masks, I'm talking about fucking ski masks and bandanas and sunglasses and shit, with military gear on, camouflage shit, boots, all sorts of shit, and these big-ass rifles, AR-15s, whatever, what you would call assault weapons, even though a bunch of these fucking slugs on the right, but, that's not an assault weapon, or there's no such thing as an assault weapon. That kind of sounds like fucking, what's his name, Ben Shapiro. An assault weapon, don't all weapons assault? Isn't every weapon an assault weapon? That's, these liberals are just out of control. So, when I see that image, that picture, these fucking masked, armed militia guys in a government office, I'm like, okay, that's that's a little, look, I'm a free speech absolutist. I am. I don't fucking like the whole adjusting your speech to appease anybody. I think if you're a decent human being, you don't want to make anybody feel less than a fucking person, so you might adjust, what you say to a person to make them not feel like lesser than. But I don't buy the whole PC thing of as long as we don't say the wrong things, everything's going to be fine. I think that's like a sort of, it's like a poor excuse for liberation. It's like, it's like a Brave New World type situation. It's like Soma. You'll feel like you're making progress, but really you're fucking not. You're still marginalized and you're still being taken advantage of by the system. So I'm a free speech absolutist, so I get it. Even if you want to be a moron, these fucking just jag-off, knuckle-dragging morons that are going to, state offices and shit saying, I want my TGI Fridays! I want my haircut! These fucking idiots that just can't wait for the Cheesecake Factory to open. Fine. If you want to do that, fine. Go ahead. However, and I'm also pro-Second Amendment. I'm against gun control. I really think, it sounds fucking stupid. Look, there is an argument to be made, all these people that are like, I have mock guns in case the government comes and tries to take my rights. And it's like Jimmy Dore said, well, the fucking government already took your rights, so go get them back there, champ. You got your gun, go get them back. But the reason I am pro-Second Amendment isn't necessarily because I think the fucking state is going to start storming people's houses. God, who knows what the fuck's happening, or going to happen. But the reason I'm pro-Second Amendment is that I really think marginalized populations, women, and leftists, and when I say leftists, I mean if you're even marginally, if you're a union member, if you're a teacher, anybody, you should probably be armed, know how to use a gun, know about gun safety, and be prepared because, look, these nut jobs, these fucking fascists, and that's what they are. They are going to go nuts. Look, there's the whole argument, Trump made these guys, he gave them a voice and all that shit. I don't buy that. Stormfront and all these fucking wackos, they existed a long time ago. And, Al-Qaeda has a fucking, newspaper, man. What's that thing called? Inspire. Fucking Al-Qaeda has a magazine. Like, that's all just devoted to jihad. Like, so it's like, I mean, these fucking psychos have been around for a long time. Like, the right wing, whether you're an Islamic fundamentalist or a Christian fundamentalist or like a fucking white identitarian supremacist, whatever, these psychos have been around for a long time, man. And it's just been a long time coming that we would have social media and these motherfuckers would be able to meet up. They're gonna find a compound in Idaho somewhere and get together. So while I do think like the Trump administration has had some sort of influence as far as right wing politics being more discussed and all this shit, like all these like comparisons to him like to the Nazis and shit like that, a little hokey in my view. But my point is that there are fucking right-wing, psycho, violent militiamen and groups that are going to start doing crazy shit. It's just gonna happen. I mean, you can fucking smell it. I mean, like I said, that there's a particular image of just these fucking 5 or 6 dudes. They got these big ass guns. They're in like military gear. They got their fucking face masks on and shit. Not the medical kind. Again, like I'm talking ski masks and shit. Bandanas. I mean, it's like, look, man, that that looks like a fucking like. It looks. Look, I mean, it's like the. I was talking to my a few friends actually about this today. Because I sent them that picture, and I'm like, dude, what doesn't get talked about is that the U.S. It's the United States of America. It is a part of the Americas, and like elsewhere in the Americas, it operates in a similar fucking way to like Pinochet's Chile or fucking Bolsonaro's Brazil. It is like a right wing, like what we would think of like when we think about like right wing Latin American countries. That is exactly how the fucking United States functions. So when you start thinking about like death squads in El Salvador and fucking I guess the Pinochet death squads and all that shit, the fascists. Dude, that's us. Like, that's here. Like, that, so when I see that picture of these fucking armed guys, they're right wing, there's something in me that there's like an immediate reaction to my stomach. Like, So, anyway, my point of being pro Second Amendment is that I really think that if you are not on the fucking right, you should probably get armed. Because they are. And it's like Killer Mike says, especially like for the black community, and I'll say the Latino, Latina, Latinx, whatever I'm supposed to say, community, and the Native American population, or First Nations if you're in Canada. If you are one of those communities in particular, there is no fucking reason in my mind why you should trust the government and not have a weapon. It's like Killer Mike says, like, we've only been considered full human beings, since like the 1960s. So why the fuck would black Americans say, yeah, you know what, Uncle Sam, I don't feel like I need a weapon. I know you got my back. So I think of it from that perspective. Just that, these fucking Nazis, and I'm telling you, these fucking Nazi groups, a lot of the motherfuckers in these Nazi groups are cops. Okay? It's unpopular to say, but they are. They attract the same people, these control-hungry, scary motherfuckers. And I'm telling you, like, there's like a study, it's quoted pretty often, about domestic violence in police officers. And it's something like 40% of people in relationships with police officers have experienced domestic violence. So is that me saying that every cop is fucked up? No. There are, I'm sure, cops that are decent working class people, and they are working class. However, there is something about that occupation that attracts fascists. And they join these right-wing groups. And so you have this whole like pattern where dude in uniform watching a protest or whatever, a cop, he's in the line of cops watching, making sure everything's okay. He sees his fellow officer walking around in a fucking Confederate flag shirt with his AR. And it's like, oh, hey, I know Jim. That type of thing. So if you are from a marginalized population or you are on the left, even remotely on the left, you will not get protection from the state. It's so even though if you have a weapon, if you have a gun, you're not going to fend off the fucking National Guard or the military. They will fucking murder you. So there is no like fucking violent uprising bullshit that's gonna happen. But these right-wing groups are going to get more and more influential and more, I guess, cozy with the state, as fucking happens under capitalism. It is a slow slouch towards fascism. That's the concern, is these fucking militias. And that, it reminds me of Spain, the Spanish Revolution. That you have a situation in which you had anarchists and communists and socialists who wanted to have their own revolutions, but fucking the fascists came about, Franco and all that shit, and before you knew it, you had the Spanish Republicans fighting alongside hardcore leftists, just to beat back fascism. And I feel like that's going to have to be in our minds. I don't want to say like that's exactly what's going to happen, but I think like we should all probably read Homage to Catalonia and get a little familiar with that history, because I hate to break it to everybody, but regardless of who wins, Biden or Trump, if Trump wins, we're going to see more of the same. It's going to get even worse as far as like climate and all that stuff, but I think like there's a good chance that the United States will just end up being a pariah state. The rest of the world is just going to be like, those guys are fucked. We need to start doing something about the climate. We need to start doing stuff about whatever, adjusting economics. And if Biden wins, I think domestically these fucking right-wing militias are going to just be really pissed off, and they are not going to give up. I mean, not to say that Trump is directly tied to these fucking psycho groups, but I mean, not every Trump supporter is in one of these fucking militia groups, but it seems like all these militia groups support Trump, as the late great Charlie Murphy said in a different way. Anyway, so that's, I think, what we have to get into our heads. We need to start studying history, and the left and anybody not on the right essentially needs to start really considering getting trained, getting armed, and being able to protect themselves, because after seeing that shit in Michigan, I really think these like Proud Boy and fucking the hell's that guy's name, Richard Spencer, like all these Nazi types, man, these fucking Nazi types. I'm telling you, I wish. Well, I mean, we got Chomsky, and he kind of, he kind of does this, but I really wish there was like someone just out there. I'm sure there is, but I really wish there was just someone out there who had been through all that shit, whether it's Italy and Mussolini or the development of the Nazi Party and all that shit, who could just sit there, who's actually, I mean, Chomsky was in the United States, he was not in Germany he's comparing Trump to the Nazis and all that stuff, but like someone who was actually there and could draw parallels for us and be like, yeah, you might want to start thinking about this and that. That would be helpful. But anyway, so that's the sort of like bad news. But I think overwhelmingly, regardless of whether the news is overwhelmingly bad or overwhelmingly good or somewhere in between, which is, I think it leans towards bad. But I have to stay optimistic. You're looking at a situation where we're going to see, hopefully, mass worker mobilizations. We're going to see different uprisings of one kind or another. We are going to hopefully see workers getting organized. I really think that we're in a unique position as a country to be able to lead the way. Because I think unlike a lot of other countries, which are already sort of developed as far as like, I mean, France, like compare France's labor situation to the United States, that type of thing. I think we are in a unique position because we are so fucking backward in so many ways that our demands, by comparison to other countries, are just going to seem very, very bland. It's like, we want universal health care. We want to get rid of the Taft-Hartley Act that prevents us from having full like workers' rights as far as organizing and all that stuff. You know, we don't want to have a fucking bloated military budget. We want to decriminalize drugs and legalize marijuana in particular. Like all this shit that we want to do. We want a stronger welfare system. You know, we want workers to have more control over the means of production. You know, if you're like me on the far left, you want total control over the means of production. But again, we're slouching towards something. You know, it's a slow progression. And we are doing all that we can with what we can. So anyway, it's almost been an hour of me just blabbing, which, you know, I don't know. I'm just feeling very, very happy today for whatever reason. It's May Day. It's a beautiful day outside. It's Friday. And I am really hopeful about all the different wildcat strikes and the organizing and salting and all that kind of stuff we're going to see. So anyway, happy International Workers' Day. Happy Labor Day. Happy May Day. Solidarity. I will talk to you next time. And, you know, stay strong because, you know, it's, what did Gramsci say? I'll close with Gramsci. Be optimistic in spirit and pessimistic in mind. You know? That's kind of how I'm trying to live. So again, solidarity, take care, and, you know, do your thing.
Arise, you toilers of all age, condemned to misery and woe, to hell with humbleness and rage, give deadly battle to the foe.